So thank you for tuning in. If you saw part one of this video, I'm sure you got a lot out of it. I hope you got a lot out of it. So on that same note, I want to continue on the same theme. I want to continue with part two. Marriage is huge on our hearts, and nobody prepares you for this crazy journey called marriage. And so my wife and I, we've been married for close to, let me count and get this right, 12 years, or is it 13? I'm just kidding. But yes, it's been one roller coaster ride, and on this journey, we've learned a lot of things the hard way. And so one of our passions, one of our burdens, or one of our, some of the things that we are super intentional about is making sure that others who are newly married or going to be married don't have to learn the lessons the hard way like we did. So I just want to recap a bit on our journey, but before I do that, it doesn't matter whether you're single, it doesn't matter whether you're married or not. This is something that, a good question that you may want to ask yourself. If you take a look at the slides, I'm just going to go through a couple of slides behind me, and so just to give you some food for thought as we are on this subject. So if you take a look at your bank account, and no, I'm not talking about the financial bank, I'm talking about something else. What does your love bank look like? So it doesn't matter how long you've been on this planet. If you've been on this planet for any length of time, a few decades, whether 20 years or more, you know that relationships are not easy, and that can be a friendship, it can be relationships with your parents, it can be relationships with your siblings, it can be relationships with your colleagues. No relationship is easy. Relationships are hard work, and relationships demand time, demand commitment, demand cultivation. And so on that note, I want to ask you this question. How is your love bank looking? Is your love bank empty? And if I can be very frank with you, my wife and I, when we first got married, we heard the nice music and the songs on the wedding day, and we thought we were going to live happily ever after. And 1 year after, my wife and I walked out of our wedding day, well, we both lost our jobs. And we spent an entire year, more than a year, both she and I without jobs. And that put a huge financial strain on us. Looking back, it was the worst year of our lives. But now I realize that it was such a blessing because it made our relationship stronger. You really discover who you are really on the inside when you go through a tough season like that. And so literally our bank accounts were almost empty. We're running on empty. But then the question then was, what about our love banks? I would like to say this, and this may surprise you, that though our bank accounts were diminished, the amounts in our accounts were diminishing, though our bank accounts were running dry, our love tanks were overflowing in a way that I cannot even begin to describe. And this is where I want to give you the key. How? Why? Why am I saying that? Why am I saying that when our bank accounts were diminishing, when our bank accounts were running dry, when we didn't even have necessarily even a roof over our heads, how am I saying that our love tanks were overflowing? And that's something I want to talk about. It doesn't matter what you're going through, it is still possible to flow and for your relationships around you to thrive. You look at the millionaires on the planet, look at the billionaires. Over the last few years, you've had everyone from Jeff Bezos to Bill Gates and many more who have gone through divorces, right? So what does that tell you? The money is not a solution, right? You can have $1 million or $1 billion. That's not the solution for life's problems. If it was, then the billionaires would be the happiest people on the planet. If it was, then the billionaires would not have had any issues in their relationships or in their marriages. And so I want to take you on this journey with me. Hang with me for a moment. And yes, you're looking at this picture on the screen right now. Believe it or not, that's me and my wife. That's me 20 kilos ago. So 20 kilos ago, that's what I look like. This was shortly before our wedding day. I'm hoping to lose a few kilos. That's my New Year resolution, mid-year resolution every year. I'll get there someday. But that's us on our wedding day. Yep, we are signing the most important document we've ever signed. And that's us. We are looking so clueless about what's going to come before us, right? That's us on our wedding day, looking quite innocent and clueless about what's going to come before us. And there we are, proudly standing with our wedding certificate, like you have won some award or something, right? So proudly with our wedding certificate. Little did we know that as you're walking out of that wedding 1 year later, we were going to hit some major storms. We were going to run into some major storms. We were both going to be without jobs. We had no clue that we were going to go through that when we were walking out of the church that day. And so I just want to say that, hey, it doesn't matter what you're going through right now, no matter what storm is hitting you, there is light at the end of the tunnel. And I'll talk a bit more about that as I share here. So yeah, we had no idea what was going to hit us. And even though we went through that serious financial storm, we lost everything. And we were literally having to take help from my wife's sister. She was kind enough to take us into her home, and we just crashed on her living room floor. We were just on her living room floor. She had a 1-bedroom place, and that's the best she could do for us. And so we were so grateful that we had that space. But in time, my visa ran out, and so my wife had to stay with her sister, and I had to go back to India, applying for jobs from there, and she was applying for jobs locally here. What am I trying to say? In all of that time, though we spent most of the time away from each other, it only strengthened our relationship and it made our bond stronger. It compelled us to go deeper in our faith, to grow deeper in our faith, to go deeper in our walk with the Lord. And this is why I'm saying this again. If you feel like you have hit rock bottom in your relationship, in your marriage, in your life, congratulations, because if you have hit rock bottom, the only place you can look is up. When you have hit rock bottom anywhere, when you've fallen into the pit, no matter how deep the pit is, if you have hit rock bottom, the only place you can look is up. So be of good cheer, be encouraged. Sometimes life throws curveballs at you. You may fall into a pit, you may fall into a trap, you may hit rock bottom. But the good thing about being in that place is the only option you have is then to look up. And that's what happened with us. When we hit rock bottom, relationally, financially, the only option we had was to look up. And so the question then is, where is your source? So if I can be frank with you, I think my wife and I, we made the same mistake that most marriages, most couples, most people do. We made each other the source. So she became my source, I became her source, and we quickly realized that that is not going to work because I'm flawed, she's flawed, and we have two flawed people coming into a relationship, and we could not possibly make each other the source. And we were quite frankly running on empty. The stress of life, the pressures of life has a way of making your love tank go empty, right? There are the betrayals of life. I don't know what you may be going through. You may feel like you're being betrayed by your loved ones. You may be feeling like you're being betrayed by your colleagues or whatever, or your best friends, right? If you look at our wedding picture, we had hundreds of people on our wedding day, and we were just having a conversation earlier with some friends, and they were asking me, so how many of those people are in your life today? Well, not many. If I look at my wedding photo, I can probably say 5 or 6 people from that wedding day a decade ago are still in my life today. So life has strange ways of teaching you some beautiful lessons. You discover who your real friends are in a crisis. So if you're going through a crisis right now, if you've hit rock bottom right now, be encouraged, get excited, because you're going to discover some things about yourself. You're going to discover some things about the relationships around you. You are going to discover who your real friends are, and it's amazing. I remember a dear friend of mine. He drives Maseratis and Porsches and all in this city, and he's very well to do. And he came up to me one day and he said, "Bro, I need to make friends with people who are your friends." And I said, "What do you mean?" He's like, "Bro, I don't know the people who are around me. Are they friends because they love me, or are they friends with me because I'm driving a Porsche or a Maserati? I don't know, but the guys who are around you, I know they are your friends because you don't drive anything." So I said, well, that's an interesting thought. A man who is a successful business owner driving the amazing luxury cars in the city is not sure about the friends in his life. So if you're going through something, I just want to reiterate this and just say this once again. Get excited. If you're going through a tough season, get excited, because that's when you discover who your real friends are. And we had to discover that for ourselves. So we discovered who our real friends are when we went through that. But there's something else we had to discover in that journey, that Manisha and I, my wife and I, we could not we could not make each other the source. She could not be my source, I could not be her source. And we realized that when we were having conflict and when we were having some clashes with one another, it was like when you're driving a car and the fuel is running out, the dashboard flashes and it tells you, hey, you got to get to a petrol station or this car's going to crash. This car's going to break down. You need to get to a petrol station quick. That's what we realized. The warning light was flashing on our dashboard, and we realized that we need help. But the question then is, where will you go? Now, the big mistake that many of us make is we tend to run to, this person, that person, here, there, and the other. I try to get help from YouTube videos. YouTube, help me, right? Google, help, right? But I want to propose to you that God is the ultimate source, and He is the only person who can satisfy, because He is love. And this is what I mean when I say this. Unless we understand the love triangle, we're going to be hopelessly going in circles over and over and over again. So I came up with this little triangle. I hope you agree with this. And why I'm so passionate about this is that without this love triangle, without this secret sauce, this equation, we cannot have unity in purpose. We cannot have unity in direction in any relationship. There cannot be spiritual unity and an agreement, especially in a marriage context. So this is what the love triangle looks like. On one end you have the man or the husband, on the other end you have the woman, and if both those individuals are going after the author of love, the source of love, who's God Himself, because the scriptures say, the Bible says that God is love, right? He is love. And so if we are going after Him, if we are pursuing Him, if we are receiving daily downloads of love from Him, instead of trying to pull it from the person beside us or from other people around us, if instead of trying to pull or draw it from relationships around us, if you're going to Him, the ultimate source, if you're going to Him who has endless supply of love and acceptance and grace, if you're going to Him, then guess what? If both of us are going to Him, we're going to inevitably draw closer to each other. If you are both going after Him, if both man and woman, husband and wife, are chasing after Him, inevitably we will draw closer to each other. And so I sometimes speak to friends and we address this in some conversations, that maybe sometimes the frictions that we see in our relationships or in our marriages or even our friendships could be because both the individuals are not chasing after the author and the source of love and compassion and grace. And so this is huge. This is huge. This is huge. And this made all the difference for Manisha and I. And I love this quote. Everywhere you look, you see people searching for love. Everywhere you look. But they are looking in the wrong places. God is love, and they will never find what they're looking for until they find Him. They will never find what they're looking for until they find Him. We should not make the mistake of thinking that marriage will provide the ultimate satisfaction for which we all hunger. I love this. This was a huge lesson for Manisha and I. And we keep learning this over and over again, every now and then, every anniversary. We recognize that we don't stand a chance without the love of God, right? We should not make the mistake of thinking that marriage will provide the ultimate satisfaction for which we all hunger. Only God satisfies the hungry heart. Only God. Marriage is but one of the channels He uses to enable us to taste how deeply satisfying His thirst quenching grace can be. I love this quote, and it's powerful. This quote probably defines everything about what Manisha and I how Manish and I go about doing marriage, because we recognize that He is our source. And trust me, believe me, I'll be the first to admit it, that whenever I've fallen out from that, whenever I've tried to replace source, we've had issues. And we've had to remind each other, wait a minute, you go to your source. Let's all go to the source and get the download that we need. And then let's come back and have a conversation and iron things out, right? So that's a huge key that I would like to present to you and propose to you as well. And I love this as well. Here's a spiritual principle. We cannot exercise love unless we have experienced grace, unless we are experiencing grace. You cannot truly love others unless you're convinced that God's love for you is unconditional, not based on your performance. Our love, either to God or to others, can only be a response to His love for us. Our love, either to God or to others, can only be a response to His love. So here's the million-dollar question. What mindset do you have? What mindset do I have? What mindset are we cultivating? Do we have a law mindset or do we have a grace mindset? Big difference between the two. Big difference between the two. And it doesn't matter which worldview you actually subscribe to, because I've even noticed that even in the church circles, in the Christian circle as well, I've seen this as well, that at the end of the day, if you are a legalist or if you are more aware of the law as opposed to grace, you will bring that into your relationships as well. One of the challenges that I've experienced is that even in our working environments, it is a performance mindset. You have something called IPR, right, which is an individual performance review. And so it's all about performance. And as you go through school, you're trained from the time you're a child that it's all about performance. You perform, you're rewarded. You don't perform, you face the consequences, or you lose relationships and friendships. So who's the most popular person in the school? Who's the most popular person in class? The person who's excelling at academics or at sports. So from the time you're children, we are conditioned and programmed in this whole way that at the end of the day, it's all about your performance. You perform for love. You perform for acceptance. You perform for applause. So we move from school, we come into college, same story, and from university, then we go into the workplace, same story right there. You're performing all the way through. We are being trained to perform, programmed to perform. And so then it's very hard and difficult, but absolutely critical and necessary for us to trade that performance mindset, that law mindset, for something that I call the grace mindset. So the million-dollar question for us: are we performing for love, or are we working from a place of love? One of the most life-changing experiences that I had, and I keep sharing this with my friends all the time, was I remember I'd failed a couple of subjects in school, and I was expecting some major punishment when I came home, because that's what I had gone through earlier. If I got 70 out of 100, it was as good as I had failed. That was the reception I got at home. And this was bad, because not only did I didn't get anything close to 70 out of 100, I had failed miserably because of the pressure of performing was so heavy and so high that I completely collapsed under that pressure, and I failed in 3 subjects. And this is in a senior year in school. And I thought, that's it, game over, you know. And I remember I locked myself in the room, and I just switched off all the lights, and I was in pitch darkness. My father came and opened the door, and I thought, okay, here comes the belt. I'm going to get a whooping. And he says, come, let's go. And he takes me, and he takes the entire family out. My mother's so angry, she's not even making eye contact with me. She's so furious. But she takes, my dad takes me, my mother, my sister, all of us, for a lavish dinner. We go to see a movie in the theater, and he is doing everything that he would do as if I'd scored the best marks, right? And I'm in my mind thinking, when's the belt coming? When's the belt coming? The belt must be around the corner. I was struggling in all of this, right? I'm not even being able to enjoy the movie properly, because I'm like, what's going on? This is weird, right? And he didn't say a word, you know. So he took us for the dinner. We came back home. As we were walking home from from the car, I just held his hand and I said, Dad, I'm sorry. Daddy, I'm sorry. And I can't begin to describe to you the look that he gave me. It was the look that Jesus gave Peter after Peter, denied him 3 times. It was that look that I cannot even begin to describe. And that look from my dad completely wrecked me. There was a smile, but there was like sadness in his eyes, and his look completely wrecked me. Needless to mention, from that point on, I worked like crazy. And 3 months on in the exams that came after that, I scored my lowest mark was 88 out of 100. So the same subjects where I'd failed were the same subjects where I excelled, and I got in the late 80s, 88, 90s, and so on, out of 100. To the extent that teachers in school were shocked. Like, how did you go from here to here? In fact, teachers would openly joke and make fun of me and mock me. I want to propose to you that I remind my dad about this incident, and when I remind him, he can't remember. He's like, really, did I do that? Did I really take you guys to a movie and for a dinner? I said, yes, Dad, you're forgetting. You did that. And what you did that day was you were demonstrating grace. You were demonstrating grace to us. And that's the same grace that God demonstrates to us through Jesus. And so that was a great memory that I was able to share with my dad. And that story kind of helped him in his journey to faith. But the point I'm trying to make is that's how God deals with us, right? He is merciful, he's full of grace. And so I would like to propose that even that the excelling or the grades that I was able to deliver was not from a place of fear, because up to that point, I was terrified about the consequences. What will happen if I get poor grades? But that day, when my dad just lavished everything upon me, treating me as if I was a topper in the class, a topper in the school, it completely shifted something in me. No longer was I performing, no longer was I studying hard to have his acceptance and his love. Now I was studying hard because I had his love. I was not performing for love, I was already working from a place, I was working hard and studying hard from a place of love. I hope that makes sense. And so I love this quote. And it's a beautiful quote by Chris Vallotton, and he says this: people of the Old Testament had a love of the law. People of the New Testament understood the law of love replaces everything. People of the New Testament understood that the law of love replaces everything. And I want to say this in all humility. I have friends, I have dear brothers and sisters, and even people I know in ministry, across countries, across nations, who fall into this trap where they still behave like people of the Old Testament, and they camp in the Old Testament, and they still behave like people of the Old Testament. They have a love of the law. But here's the deal, and this is the game changer, right? The people of the New Testament understood that the law of love replaces everything. It's not about a rule book, it's not about do's and don'ts. The law of love replaces everything. Here's another interesting quote by Matthew Henry, a legend of the faith. There are so many concordance materials that I highly recommend that have been authored by him, a legend of the faith, and he made this statement. He said, woman was taken out of man, not out of his head to top him, nor out of his feet to be trampled underfoot by him, but out of his side to be equal to him, under his arm to be protected, near his heart to be loved. And so here's the ultimate standard. And I was having a conversation with my sister a few years ago when she was telling me that she wanted to marry someone who does not subscribe to the Christian faith. And she's like, well, he doesn't smoke, he doesn't drink, he doesn't da-da-da-da-da, he has a good job, da-da-da-da-da. So what if he doesn't believe in Jesus? What's the problem? And this is what I told her. I said, darling, my dear sweetheart, my little baby sister, let me ask you a question. What guarantee do you have that this person who's not smoking today, who's not consuming alcohol today, who's not hitting you today, will not do these things tomorrow? And she's like, well, there are no guarantees in life. I said, well, yeah, darling, sis, sure, there are no guarantees in life. But there is something that I would like to propose. There is no book on the planet that I have found that presents a challenge like this to husbands. Husbands, love your wives, as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her. That's the ultimate standard. I have not found that standard in any other book on the planet. And so tomorrow, if your husband is doing any of those things, if he's cheating on you, if he's hitting you, if he's going down the alcoholic route or whatever, or mismanaging his finances or going into gambling or whatever, if I come to him and say, hey, haven't you read this? He can turn around and tell me, wait, I don't believe in that book. I don't believe in your God. Don't talk to me about that. But here's my question. If you marry someone, if you marry somebody who subscribes to this worldview, if you marry somebody who subscribes to this faith, I can come to that person and say, hello, brother, if you subscribe, are we reading the same book? Because if you are reading the same book, I need to ask you, hey, are you loving my sister? Are you loving your wife as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her? If not, then let's have a conversation. It's time to repent. It's time to change your thinking, and let's align. Let's have some tough conversations. Do you believe in this or no? Are we are we on the same page or not? Let's have a conversation. And because that person has subscribed to this, there are grounds for me to have a serious conversation with that person. But if that person has not, if your husband, if the person you're going to marry has not subscribed to this, then how can I confront, how can I deal with that person? How can I hold that person accountable if that person has not even subscribed to this standard? And so, yeah, when I got married, I was like, wow, this is the ultimate standard for husbands. There can be no higher standard than this. I have not read any other standard on the planet or any other book on the planet that presents such a challenge to husbands. Husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church and sacrificed himself for her. That's the ultimate standard right there. I love this quote by Rick Warren. You can read it with me. The best use of life is love. The best expression of love is time. And the best time to love is now. Love always involves responsibility, and love always involves sacrifice. Marriage is not a union merely between two creatures. It is a union between two spirits. And the intention of that bond is to perfect the nature of both by supplementing their deficiencies with the force of contrast, giving to each sex, to each gender, those excellencies in which it is naturally deficient. I can tell you this right here. This was a huge lesson for me. My wife is very, very different from me, and those of you in the room who know my wife and know me can tell we are very, very different people. She's very different. Her communication style is very different from mine. Her strengths are, she's strong in areas where I'm very, very weak, and I would like to believe I'm a little strong in areas where she is weak as well. So that's the beauty. That's the beauty of God. God is the ultimate matchmaker. And when we allow him to be the matchmaker, he makes sure that he'll bring someone into your life who's strong in areas where you are weak and where your strengths can actually help make up for the other person's shortcomings and weaknesses as well. So I love this quote. I love this quote. Sometimes I need to remind myself. So where love is the compelling power, I love this quote as well. Where love is the compelling power, there is no sense of strain or conflict or bondage in doing what is right. If we want the advantages of love, then we must be willing to take the risk of love. And that requires vulnerability. Of course, we can refuse this path and trod another one devoid of openness, but the toll of such a road is extremely, extremely high. It's a beautiful quote by Chuck Swindoll, another hero, legend of the faith. And this is the scripture again that I was referring to, right? Husbands, love your wives, just as Christ also loved the church and sacrificed himself for her. I never read words like this that challenges husbands everywhere. And I'm challenged by this on a daily basis. I'll be honest and real with you. There's not a week that goes by that I don't fall short in some way. There's not a month that goes by that I don't disappoint my wife in some way. But every time I'm allowed, or rather the grace of God brings me to a place where I'm able to reset and say, Lord, I'm weak, but you're strong. I need a fresh download. please download some of that love into me, because my tank is running empty, right? So we all need a filling. If our phones run out of battery, we don't throw our phones away, we give it for charging. Same thing is true for our cars, right? Don't we need it? I would like to propose that a lot of us, those of us who go through conflicts in our relationships, in our offices, in our with our family members, with our loved ones, sometimes even with the people who love us the most, right? That's where more fireworks tend to happen, with the people we love the most. I would like to propose to you that probably that is due to the fact that we're not receiving a download of love from the author, the source of all love, and that's Him. And so, that's been the challenge that I've embraced, to just receive that fresh download of love every day, and to take that challenge. Take that challenge seriously. Husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church and sacrificed Himself for her. And so this is something that I'm very passionate about as well, right? So if I can be very honest with you, when I got married, I had no idea that I was bringing a lot of invisible baggage into the relationship. When my wife got married, I had no idea, she had no idea that she was bringing a lot of invisible baggage into the relationship as well. What am I trying to say? She went through sexual abuse at different stages of her life. I went through 7 or 8 years of sexual abuse from the age of 4 till the age of 10, 11 at the hands of a family friend. So that definitely affected my view and made me very, very secretive, made me very, very insecure, made me very, very suspicious of people, relationships, and so on. And so because a lot of fear and threats were used by my abuser with me, I just learned to bottle up my pain, bottle up my fear, bottle up my whatever I was going through. I was not good at communicating. I still remember the day that I eventually told my parents that this is what so-and-so is doing with me. And I just remember their reaction, and I felt that they started crying. And when they started crying, my parents started crying, I realized, oh my goodness, have I done something wrong by telling them that this was happening to me? I felt guilty for telling my parents that I was going through this sexual abuse for 7, 8 years. But what am I trying to say? Your history, right? I'll be frank with you. My parents didn't have a very cozy, rosy marriage. There used to be world wars in the house. My sister and I would see some major world wars happening, World War III, 4, 5, and 6. And every time the doorbell would ring, and a neighbor or family friend would come, good morning, good evening, welcome, please do come. And I'm like, whoa, I mean, just a few seconds ago it was World War III. And now so I was like, whoa, wait a minute, I'm not so sure, and then as soon as those guests would leave, it'll be back to square one. And I would be like, whoa, wait a minute, if this is marriage, I'm not so sure I want this. And so for the longest time, I had very negative views of marriage. And it took me some time to recognize that, wait a minute, perhaps I don't have a great point of reference. There is another, I need to seek out other references, other good marriages that I can draw inspiration from. And that's what I want to propose to you as well. Find great friends, find awesome friends, find people who have gone on this journey, seek out resources, seek out people that you can draw inspiration from. The other thing I want to talk about is the seed principle. So something that I learned the hard way is that at the end of the day, I cannot expect to see fruit in my relationship or in my home if I'm not sowing seeds. To give you an example, if I get a call that someone else is married couple are going through something, and if I am not being able to be a channel of encouragement to them, if I'm not able to be a blessing to them, if they're going through a financial challenge, if I'm not able to bless them financially, just with a little token of help, if I'm not able to help somebody out there, another home, another marriage, then I cannot expect a return in my home. If I'm trying to sow confusion or sow division in another home, in another family, then I can't expect to have peace in my home. So that's a powerful principle I would like to propose to you, the seed principle, that at the end of the day, we reap what we sow. So the question is, what are you sowing? What am I sowing into other homes, into other families, into other lives? The other factor I would like to say, I would like to propose to you is core values. So when I came to faith, I had to quickly trade decide that, hey, I need to trade some values. There are some values I have that do not entirely line up with his values, with the values of my king and his kingdom. And I had to decide to unsubscribe and trade certain values for his values, right? So that's another thought I want to place before you. Are there some values that you have embraced that are probably not in line with the king and his values? Number 4, I would talk about our roots and our life source, your roots and your life source. So at the end of the day, if you're not happy with the kind of fruit that you're seeing in the tree, a good place to check would be your roots. So where are the roots drawing, what kind of soil is the roots, are the roots drawing their nutrients from? Where am I drawing our nutrients and our vitamins from, our relational minerals, all right? All our relationships need some vitamins and need some minerals. We need good friends around us who are pouring into our relationship, into our marriage as well. You can be surrounding yourself with divisive friends who are trying to sow all sorts of other things in your mind, or you can have friends who will actually dare you and challenge you to be the best version of yourself in your marriage. And so who are you surrounding yourself with? And at the end of the day, where is your ultimate source? That covers the last 2 points: your life source, your roots, external influences. So I spoke a bit about this earlier. So we all have beliefs that we subscribe to. We have beliefs that we subscribe to, and those beliefs influence us and have an influence on the values that we hold dear on the inside. And when we have certain values on the inside, those values will definitely show up in what we think. So my thoughts are definitely influenced by my values. My values are influenced or fed by my belief system, right? And then eventually those thoughts become words and deeds, and words and deeds become seeds, right? So my words, my deeds become seeds, and those seeds are seeds that will eventually bear fruit. And that can be fruit in my marriage, it can be fruit from a parenting perspective, it can be fruit in friendships, it can be fruit in work-related relationships, and so on. And so that's food for thought. The challenge for you and for me is, what am I believing? So every time Manish and I would have a conflict, I would ask myself, okay, what am I believing? What is she believing in this situation? Why are we having this conflict? Are we behaving in line with our values? Are we violating the values that we have subscribed to? What is going on between my ears? What's going on in my mind? Are there some lies operating in my head? Am I listening to the right voices? Am I listening to the voice of perfect love? Or am I listening to some other voice, right? Is my ego or my narcissism, acting up, or, what am I listening to? And so that definitely is manifested in our words and our deeds. And so that's something that I want to propose to you. What seeds are you sowing? Check the seeds that you're sowing. Check the fruit. If you're not happy with the fruit, check the seed. If you're not happy with the seed, work backwards all the way up to your values, your thoughts, your mindset, your beliefs. And so I come back to this again. What are the seeds that you are sowing as a married couple? What seeds are you sowing? If you're sowing towards kingdom unity, then your home and your family will reap the fruits of unity. Prioritizing church unity at the expense of kingdom unity is an exercise in futility. I love Galatians chapter 6 verse 7. Do not be deceived. God is not mocked. For whatever a man sows, that he will also reap. That's the New Testament right there. That's the New Testament. And so I love the book of Jeremiah as well. We spoke about cultivating and so on. But at the end of the day, where is the soil? The soil is our heart. So more than cultivating anything else around us, the most important space and place that we need to cultivate is our hearts. The most important space that we need to watch is what's going on between our ears, in our head. Is our mind being renewed? Is our mindset that of a grace mindset, or is it a law mindset? It's a constant daily check we need to do. Anyone who's into farming, and I speak to people sometimes, I have colleagues who are, who have farms back home, and they keep talking about this, that they have to constantly check the soil because there are things that can creep in there. and that soil is so valuable, it constantly needs to be checked. It needs to be watered, but it also needs to be fertilized. And so the soil of our hearts needs to be fertilized. It needs water. It needs nutrients in order to for it to be productive and for the seed to actually bear the fruit that we want to see. And so I love the scripture again, Proverbs chapter 4, verse 23. Above all else, guard your heart. Guard the soil. Guard the soil. And so everything we do flows out from our heart. And so I challenge friends all the time. You have 24 hours in the day, and out of those 24 hours, you're probably in the workplace for like 9 or 10 hours. There's not much time you get to spend with your loved one. By the time I'm 80, 90, I hope I make it to 80, 90, but by the time our lives are over, when you look back at your life, you would have seen that you spend 60% of your life in the office. You don't spend 60% of your life with your loved ones. You don't spend 60% of your life in church. You don't spend 60% of your life with the people you love necessarily, or your family. You spend 60% of your life in the workplace, right? And so the question then is, what are you seeing? What are you saying? What are you doing? What are you hearing? Are we conscious of that? Are we making sure that we are feeding on the right things? Are we making sure that our ears and our eyes are feeding on the right things? Are we making sure that our soil is taken care of? And so that's the $1 million question, right? And so the fruit reaped, that's another thought I want to leave with you. Just a thought, food for thought. You may sow one seed, but the fruit that comes out from that one seed is not one. You don't just get one apple from one apple seed. You get a whole lot of apples from one seed. So we need to be super, super intentional of what exactly it is that we are sowing in our friendships, in our relationships, in our marriage, even as parents and so on. We need to be super intentional about what we are sowing, because the fruit is more. I want to switch gears to the financial side of things. So as I mentioned earlier before I started speaking, my wife and I, we went through some crazy financial seasons. 1 year after we got married, we both lost jobs. 1 year after we got married, we lost everything. And we had no idea when we were walking out of our wedding day that we were going to go through this financial storm. But it did such beautiful things for our marriage. It made our marriage stronger. It made our relationship stronger. It forced us to depend on the source, the author of love, and the source of peace, the source of all grace, the source of all provision. It forced us to look upwards and to receive from Him, and not fight each other, right? And so I love some of these quotes. Money is amoral. It's neither good nor evil in itself. When money is a problem in a marriage or a family, the financial problems are usually just the tip of the iceberg. Hidden beneath the surface usually lies the iceberg of selfishness. Marriage demands commitment, and apart from sexual fidelity, nothing is more important than maintaining a commitment to each other when it comes to what we do with our money. I love this quote as well. Feeling that one spouse, these are hard facts here, a bit serious facts, but it's worth thinking about this. Feeling that one spouse spent money foolishly increased the likelihood of divorce by 45% for both men and women. Couples that argue about finances at least once a week are 30 times more likely to get divorced. And so I want to propose to you, we need a financial plan. We need some financial values. So even for Manish and I, we had to get on the same page very, very quickly. Sometimes I would like to propose to you that going through a financial tough time, going through a financial desert, going through a financial valley is easier than going through a financial, experiencing a financial miracle and financial abundance. Because now that God has given us resources, we need to decide how do we steward this well. Sometimes it's easier to go through a tough season financially. It's easier to go through that than to go through a season where now you have a financial blessing, and now how do you handle this? How do you agree? How do you get on the same page to deal with this? Who decides? And so I would like to propose to you, this is a lovely checklist that I keep sharing with people and with friends. When you have financial abundance, when you have resources at your disposal, ask yourself, what have you sown? What can you sow for other people? husbands, wives, what can you sow? What kind of seed are you sowing, and what kind of fruit do you want to see? Another person that I draw incredible inspiration from is somebody by the name of Francis Chan, and he made this amazing statement. He's somebody I respect very, very deeply. He and his wife, he actually started a church in his home, in his living room. And after years and years and years, his church saw exponential growth, and they became like, I think, 5,000 to 6,000 members strong. But he was really struggling within himself, because he felt that his church was not looking like the book of Acts. His church was not looking like the church that Jesus set up before he left. His church was not looking like the church you see in the scriptures. And he was very disturbed about that. And he was praying about it. And he realized that out of all the resources that he had, the upkeep of the building itself was costing millions. Salaries of staff and so on was draining the budget of the church. And he was not happy that outside his church, the neighborhood was poor and there was poverty all around him. And it really, really disturbed him. So for years he was wrestling with this, that why is everyone coming to the building and enjoying the services, but none of these people are going out there and having impact on the world around them. And so he was wrestling with this. It really bothered him, it disturbed him. And eventually the straw that broke the camel's back, if I can say, was he got to hear about a gang member from his city who came to faith in Christ and left the gang violence life, and started coming to his church. After 2 years, that gang member stopped coming to his church and went back to his gang. And he asked one of the leaders in his church, why did this amazing guy go back to his gang? Why did he go back to his gang? He was coming for 2 years. And the answer that he got completely broke his heart. The answer that this gang member gave is, when I was with my gang, they were my brothers. I was with them 24/7, 7 days a week. They were my brothers, they had my back. I thought that when I was coming to church, I would have a new band of brothers who would have my back, with whom I could do life 24/7. I did not know that when I was coming to church, I was just signing up for 2-day-a-week thing. And so, to be honest, I feel like I have more love in that gang, and so he went back to the gang. And Francis Chan said that he wept and he broke down, because he was like, whoa, something is wrong. If this person who's moved out of the gang and come to my church for 2 years is finding more love and acceptance in that gang than he is in my church community, something is wrong with how I'm doing church. My church is not reflecting and not anywhere close to the church of the book of Acts. And he made this amazing statement. So long story short, he quit. Francis Chan stepped down from the leadership of the church, got on a plane with his family, flew to China, because he wanted to understand, how is the underground church in China operating? They don't have a building, they don't have massive resources. How is the underground church in China multiplying and operating? He went underground for a couple of years to discover how the underground church in China is operating. And now today you can go online and Google Francis Chan. He's started a new movement called wearechurch.com, and his vision is to have 100,000 churches house churches around the world, in the US and beyond. And he's hoping that every church would have 10 people. Now you tell me, if there are 100,000 churches, house churches around the world, is that hard? I'm sure there can be 100,000 homes around the world that can open their doors, right, for fellowship. But if 100,000 homes are reaching 10 people, how many is that? Let's do the math. That's 1 million. And he's like, that's way more people than my my previous church was reaching. And so he made this statement. He said, amazing couple, Francis and his wife. You must check them out. They've got some amazing content online. And he made this statement: our lives should be more than just focusing on our marriage, but focusing our marriage towards what God's mission is for us as a couple. we are not an island unto ourselves, both within our marriage and within the world. Be mindful that there's a cloud of witnesses watching us. Be mindful that there's a cloud of witnesses watching us. And so that's a book that is available for free download that he's authored. For those who want to buy the book, there's an option to buy, but he's also made the book available for free download. It's a beautiful book that he's authored, me and you and me forever. And so I love this quote again. When you work together to assist or cheer up people whom God leads you to help, you double your impact for good. You double your impact for good, and you make your marriage happier as you make others happier. God has ordained you both to serve others as a team. Make a list of kind acts you can do together. Include some that you can do anonymously. Mentor others to help them have better marriages. Sponsor an impoverished child together. Do something. Do something. And so, I want to end on that note. I could go on and on, but I want to end on this note. At the end of the day, I've seen things happen. I've seen that when Manish and I have overcome our differences and we are determined to seek the kingdom together, when we are determined to sow towards the kingdom together, and we are determined to build the kingdom together and overcome every hindrance and obstacle and every challenge that comes our way, we see fruit, we see results, and we experience peace and joy that money cannot buy. And that's the real deal, right? Are we experiencing peace and joy? Can we experience peace and joy that money cannot buy? Because as I said earlier, Bill Gates, richest man, another one, Jeff Bezos. If money could buy happiness, if money could buy relational joy and relational health and relational prosperity, then Bill Gates and Jeff Bezos would be the happiest guys on the planet with thriving marriages and happy families. But that's not the case, right? Money cannot buy you joy. And so I want to dare you on to challenge you. If you're a couple, if you're watching this, consider how you can be a blessing, how you can impact other families, other lives, other marriages, those who are less fortunate, and so on. So on that note, I will end right here, but please do watch the next sections that are next parts that are going to come up shortly. Thanks for listening.